the French TV situation has gone about as badly as you can imagine.
Well, we dealt with Barcelona's crisis last week, and this time it's the turn of Ligue, the French top division, which is in its own very difficult and disturbing state. So we're going to explore that today, and I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Slater and Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic. We'll get stuck in immediately with Matt. How did we get to this point, and how bad is it?
Well, that's a good question. Well, there are a few things probably to say. First of all, like the rest of Europe, like every league, the French league is dealing with COVID. You know, they've just spent an entire year playing behind closed doors. That's almost like the first half of the double whammy. France has a very specific issue, though, in that they've completely cocked up their TV deal. France is the fifth, really, of the big five leagues. That would be England, Spain, Italy, Germany, and France. Very ambitious. They didn't always used to be fifth. Probably in the 90s, they were probably the second strongest league. When England was serving its ban from Europe, they were probably second to Serie A. But they've been in decline. So they wanted to arrest that. You had this sort of kind of perfect marriage between very ambitious people. You had France desperate to boost its TV deal. They had this sort of idea they wanted to get to €1 billion a season. And you had this company called Mediapro, which is sort of a Spanish-based agency. They've got businesses all over Europe that had just attracted big Chinese backing. So they had a big check to spend. They tried to buy the Serie A domestic rights in Italy. That didn't happen. They moved their attentions to France. They basically paid considerably over the odds. Well, yes, proved to be considerably over the odds because they couldn't make a business out of it. They blew Canal Plus, French TV's, French football's partner since 1984, very much the sort of Sky of French football. They blew them out of the water. They got most of the rights. Last season starts, okay? Within about a month, Mediapro's new products, new platform, they didn't really have a presence in France before, has problems. They need 2, 3, 4 million subscribers. Wow. They've got about 600,000. They say whoa, slow down, we paid too much. 2 months in, it's all gone, it's all unraveled. They want the deal off, they pay a fine, they get out the deal. French league has to go back cap in hand to Canal Plus, and they get through last season on a sort of, we'll pay you what we were paying you last year. So French clubs down on match day, now down on TV. That they thought, hello, we've got this much money coming in, it proves to be this much. Now we get to sort of that was part 2. Part 3 of the story is how they then fix it. So that was supposed to be a 4-year deal with Mediapro. They've now got 3 years of it left. So they do a new auction about 2-3 months ago, but they don't let Canal Plus be in, renegotiate their little slither. Remember, they paid over the odds because they were dragged upwards by Mediapro. So beIN and Canal Plus wanted the whole lot to be re-auctioned. They went to court. The court sort of said kind of no, although we're not finished with that process yet. Anyway, they proceeded with this re-auction of the 80% of the rights that Mediapro used to have at this big price. Long story short, they basically gave them an amazing deal to Amazon Prime, because they really wanted a long-term relationship with Amazon. They wanted to bring a new entrant into the market. So now you have this weird situation where Amazon Prime have got 80% of the French rights, all and Ligue 2 as well, for pretty much the same price that beIN paid for 20%.
Wow.
And beIN were not allowed, beIN / Canal Plus, who are renting the beIN rights, were not allowed to re-auction, to rebid. Now, that's where we're at. From a financial point of view, the clubs are £400 million down on last season.
Good
on TV money they thought was coming in, plus the match day, and then plus the uncertainty because Canal Plus have gone to court. So now you have a reduced TV deal that one partner is disputing. beIN have already withheld a payment for League 2 rights about a month ago. So you have huge fall in income because they took this big punt on this brand new TV partner that got carried away and then couldn't deliver. They've then had to accept a lesser amount, and they've now managed to upset all their previous partners. So the French TV situation has gone about as badly as you can imagine.
If you're not yet an Athletic subscriber, you can currently join for 30% off the price of annual subscription. That's less than £1 or $1 per week. Just go to theathletic.com/Ask Ornstein to sign up and enjoy all of our comprehensive football and US sports coverage catered to your teams. Now, before we get back to Laurie and Matt, a question for you. Which Ligue 1 player is best suited to the Premier League? Let us know in the comments below. This is where I'm going to bring Laurie in because he's written a really in-depth and fascinating forensic piece on this that you can go and see on The Athletic. Laurie, the clubs, how is this going to affect them? And do you feel this is as bad as some people were fearing at the beginning? Now it's being played out in practice.
Yeah, it's difficult to say exactly where you put the dial on it because certainly people were looking at this market and thinking this is ripe for plucking. You know, we can get some good deals here, we can get some bargains. As it's happened, the people that I've spoken to feel that actually French clubs are still getting decent value for the players. You look at Romain Perrault, who's gone to Southampton for about 11 million, Boubacar Samari, who's gone to Leicester for about 17 million. People in the industry feel that they are fair prices for those players. The difference being that these clubs have to sell those players this summer rather than maybe, try and hold on to them or say they're not for sale at all, So I think the TV crisis has certainly accentuated the financial accounts across the board. And then for certain clubs, they thought, right, we need to cash in now on these players. I mean, you look at Lille, they won the French title. They've lost their manager, Christophe Galtier, to Nice, who, are privately backed. So they have, good resources to cut against the TV collapse. Lille certainly have to sell. They've already sold Soumaré. They might have to sell some others. They've got a lot of talent in their squad. Lyon is another team that have, to sources that I've spoken to, said that they can only do frees and loans. So, on the flip side of that, they probably need to sell. And this is a club, obviously, that won the French title 7 years in a row and is traditionally a Champions League qualifier. They missed out this season 2 points. So I think that's just, hastened the need perhaps for them to readjust the balance. So yeah, for sure, it has made clubs look at ways of increasing their revenue by player trading, which, French clubs have always done. But I think at the moment, it seems like prices are holding firm.
We're going to come back to the players in a moment because I know that's a section and a subject that many people watching this will be desperate to hear more about. But Matt, on the issue of the clubs, are we seeing a division here more stark than ever before between the rich and the poor? Is it an existential crisis for some as opposed to a minor bump in the road for others?
Well, it's quite sad actually because the French league had an amazing finish. It had one of the best finales in Europe. It went to the wire. There were 3 or 4 teams in it, and we had this sort of surprise winner in that Lille beat PSG. So there is a sort of, well, not irony, but it's sort of a sadness to this that this shouldn't be the case really. But look, it is what it is. Everyone knows that PSG are owned effectively by Qatar, by the Qatari Sovereign Wealth Fund. Laurie's already mentioned Nice being slightly insulated from this. They're owned by Sir Jim Radcliffe, one of the UK's richest men. He owns Ineos. There are a couple other clubs. Monaco have a wealthy sort of oligarch that owns them. But even they are struggling because the TV situation is the TV situation. If you budget for one number and then it comes in here, well, you are down. You have a hole in your finances. And then if you like everybody else, everyone across Europe is about 10 to 15% down because of match day. Well, that's just compounding the issue for France. There'll be sort of TV rebates from 2 years ago, sponsorship rebates, all sorts. And you have some of these clubs that have kind of specific issues. So, Lyon, Laurie mentioned Lyon. Lyon did something quite smart. They started to really kind of try and use their stadium, 7 days a week. This is always the sort of thing. Can you use your assets better? They built this big indoor arena. They were really going to get into sort of music and, host concerts and, just create more traffic around their stadium. Well, the timing could not have been worse. They basically become a sort of concert organizer just as COVID arrives. So, that's just bad luck, isn't it? Lille were already running too hot before COVID arrived. The club was effectively repossessed about a year ago. The owner was booted out, at the beginning of this year, booted out because he owed money to a hedge fund. That was Gerard Lopez. So there were issues in France already. I think what we're going to see next year is a re-establishment of the order of recent years. where PSG walk away with it. They'll be first in line, won't they, for all this French talent? In the same way that Bayern Munich pick off their rivals' best players, I think PSG will very much be doing that right now.
Laurie, on to the players. You've touched upon a couple of them already. I think when this crisis broke out, many people, especially in England, the Premier League, were thinking that this was going to be a feeding frenzy for English top flight clubs, maybe even Football League clubs. Go to France, pick up talent on the cheap, irrespective of the post-Brexit regulations. This is going to be a great opportunity, and it's going to help the food chain because English clubs are going to take those French talents. They can sell them on for more. Maybe La Liga, Serie A will do similar. But it hasn't quite happened like that just yet. And what I can see from reading your piece is that the prices aren't really changing. It's just that whereas clubs in the past, like Lyon, might have said, you're not for sale, Jean-Michel Aulas putting his block up and not wanted, you're not wanted here, thank you. They're now saying, yeah, you can come and take our players, but for a price. And others, yeah, I'm sure there will be more affordable deals. We look at somebody like Marseille, and I know that Boubakary Kamara is available. He's meant to be a prodigious talent, and clubs so far haven't come in at around the 20 million euros mark. So clearly there will be deals to be had, but then there are players like a Camavinga, who we presume is going to go for top dollar at some point. Mbappe, he either signs a new contract or leaves for a huge fee or goes as a free agent in a year, but that's a unique case with PSG. So throw a few names around for us to give our audience a flavour of what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think Camavinga is probably the most interesting case because, Manchester United have looked at him. It was on their radar for a couple of years now. They know his situation very well. It's more complicated than, I suppose, a player having 1 year left on his deal and therefore he's going to leave because he will have, a selection of clubs looking at him. PSG, as Matt's touched upon, they would be first in line for a player like that. Do they want to push the button on that, or is the Paul Pogba situation something that they're keeping an eye on? So you've got sort of that moving part. But I think Camavinga is a really interesting case. Clearly very highly rated, so young, yet he's got 3 caps for France, a kind of dynamic presence in midfield, and I think he could be someone that could really suit the Premier League. So we'll see how that one shakes down. There's Sven Botman, obviously at Lille, who's impressed at centre back. There's Jeremy Doku, who is Camavinga's teammate at Rennes, who only joined from Anderlecht for a significant fee. I think about £23 million. He played well for Belgium at the Euros, so we can see his talent, sort of exciting winger, and he sort of falls into the category that Rennes have employed in the past few years, where they've sort of spent decent money on sort of young players coming through, knowing that they can get them into the team, get them first team football, and then sell them on for a higher price. So even though they spent 23 million on Doku, you think his transfer value would be increased.
I'll pick up on your Camavinga point because there have been huge reports of him and Manchester United, him and PSG, him and Real Madrid. I think that one's at an earlier stage than many people have suggested, and I don't think a decision has been made yet. There's a small number of clubs who are interested in him, but I don't think talks are at an advanced stage. And that allows me to finish with Matt, because Rennes have a very wealthy owner, the second richest man in France, I read, and therefore he either is going to get his price for somebody like Camavinga and then he'll do the deal, or he'll let him go as a free agent. And yes, he won't get the profit, but he'll get him for 1 year extra. Laurie's given the names there, Matt, but from your contacts and your knowledge of this league and this crisis, maybe just finish up by explaining whether you see an influx of talent from France as this window progresses, now that the Euros is finished, or do you think it's going to be slightly different to what people expect?
No, I do think, influx is, to say, define influx. I think there'll be a significant number. I think one of the things that's keeping prices up at the moment is English clubs. These players, we all know who they are. Everyone's using analytics and everyone can see the Ligue these days. They know who the players are. So they're competing with each other. That keeps the price up. If they just got organised and did a little cartel and said, guys, you can have him, we'll have him, they could share all this out really, really quickly and halve the prices. I'm not suggesting they should do that, of course, because that sounds illegal. But that's where we're at. If a market has been made, everybody knows there's lots of good players playing in France. Everybody knows the league is way down on its TV, down on its match day, and there is pressure to sell. I said there's another club actually that to keep an eye on in terms of, well, they will be okay, and it's another club that are well backed, well financed, and it's Troyes. And who owns Troyes? They just got promoted. They got promoted out of League Two. They're owned by Manchester City. Right, they're owned by the City Football Group. So it's not every French club is in dire straits. A lot of them are, but there's going to be some winners and some losers from this. And the other thing that just to finish my point about Troyes, it's not just French players who will be for sale after this. French clubs will be for sale. We already know that Marseille have been on the market off and on for a long, long time. And I strongly suspect in the next year or two, we start to see more of this sort of creation of these multi-club models. And it'll be French clubs will be now in the shop window because they produce talent.
Well, you've both presented a picture that suggests France is not only a fertile ground, but it's also the league or the country that we should be watching this summer for deals in the transfer market and potentially in the club transfer market as well. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see how the next few months progress.